Okay. Hello and welcome to a new episode of the SuccessGrid podcast with your host Hussein Talib. My guest today, his name is Brendan Neely. Brendan Neely, is that exactly the way I spelled it, Neely?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Awesome. He's an entrepreneur, profit first, and bank on yourself professional. He is the co-host of Wealth Wisdom Financial Podcast with his wife Amanda. They founded and managed Overflow Coffee Bar L3C from 2008 through 2018. Now they share their experience and knowledge through podcasting and through developing personalized financial strategies for individuals, couples, and businesses. Brendan, welcome to the Success Grid podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Awesome to have you.
It's gonna be awesome. I'm glad to do it live. This is gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course it is. You never know what happens. So give us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your story. And from what I have gave in the introduction, you work with your wife. So
yeah,
tell us, why do you do that?
Yeah, and we are still married, which is amazing, right? I think that there's two things in running a business with your spouse is you get to hang out and learn a lot more about each other and build something more powerful together. Because when you have community, when you're a business owner, it's a very lonely road, right? And so when you have somebody who understands and is part of the journey, it just makes it all the better. And honestly, this, we all have different strengths and weaknesses. And so to be able to have and pull off of each other's strengths, that's a very powerful thing. So if you listen to our podcast, she's the writer and is really good at public speaking. And so I'm there for colorful commentary mainly, but she is really good at really creating, content that people can actually understand, especially in this crazy world.
Yeah, exactly. It's very demanding. It's very demanding nowadays. So first, tell us, what exactly do we mean by profit first and banking in yourself? Is there a difference between the two? This is what you do. This is your main profession. So what's the difference between both of these?
Yeah, I am first and foremost a business owner and an entrepreneur. And what I learned is most businesses, majority of small businesses fail. And it's not because of passion. It's usually because of revenue, right? And it also leads to divorces and things like that, because money has a big impact on everything else around us, right? What I've also learned, every business owner is in the banking business, whether they think about it or think it or not, right? They are in the banking business.
That's interesting. Every business is in the banking business, basically.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you think about it, even if you have an Etsy shop, somebody makes a percentage off of it. If you do anything where there's a transaction, somebody's using a credit card, most likely, right? And so thinking through that, and then also thinking through, hey, the cost of debt, right? People are using credit card debt like water, and somebody's saying, well, you deserve this thing, and they're getting 22% interest, and they're working for a bank for a quarter of their time, right? Just for things like that. And so thinking about it from a business owner perspective, I went into business as a coffee shop to change the world, to make a difference in the community around me and coffee farmers world. That's why we did this. But we realized we weren't paying ourselves a fair wage. We were wanting to help people be paid fairly in Guatemala or wherever the coffee was from, Uganda, things like that. But then we were not paying ourselves. And most business owners, they fall in two camps. They're either paying themselves too much or not paying themselves at all, right? Mm-hmm. What Profit First does is think about, how do we make sure you as the business owner and entrepreneur are putting yourself and paying yourself fairly and profiting first, right? Putting that into the system as opposed to waiting and eventually I'll get paid. That eventually never happens
Yeah.
in a lot of cases.
Yeah. So the concept is to pay yourself first. So do you think, for example, any business owner from the start should focus on how should I, from the beginning, how should I, or when should I, or when must I start putting money, cash into my pockets instead of waiting when thinking is the business is really profitable, is making like really huge revenues and really huge profit margins?
Yeah, I think you have to start right from the beginning, right? It's kind of like the envelope system, right? So you are your greatest asset, right? If you are not taken care of, then you are not going to do well, right? And so you want to make sure that you are paying yourself first and running a efficient machine. Because what will happen if you don't think about your money, and this is where I tell every business owner, is to make sure that you are the CFO of your business. Don't delegate that and run a lean business, because everybody's going to tell you, you watch TV for 5 minutes. There is a plan for your money, and everybody's going to give you things that you should do. If you do this, then your business is going to go great. If you do this, your business is going to go great. And so by having a lean machine, you're able to figure out what really works, right? Does that make sense? So what they call it in profit first language is target allocation percentages. Your target allocation percentage, you don't start here, but it's 5% goes to profit, 50% goes to owner's pay, 30% to OPEX, and 15% towards taxes. That means you have to run a business off of 30%. You're going to do things differently than if you were going to just put a lot of money into it.
So, but you mentioned at the beginning that most businesses fail. So why do you think they fail, and what do you think should be done before for the business to, let's say, profit? I don't want to say from the beginning, but maybe that's tough, but let's say profit after like 1 year or two, maybe.
Yeah, I think that a lot of businesses, there's a couple things when you're a business or starting out. I believe that there's a lot of people who are in the entrepreneur phase that should be working, right? They should not be entrepreneurs because they don't actually understand how much pain it takes, right? There's a lot of pain in running a business, and there's a lot of what I call entrepreneurs, right? So there's tons of entrepreneurs out there, people who say they want to be entrepreneurs, but they really don't want to because they're not putting the effort. Like a podcast, it's an act of love. You don't make any money off of a podcast, but it's showing up, doing the things on the day in the day out, right? Right? It's true, right? And being able to grow into that, right? And so I think that there's 3 things that I tell people all the time is know that you know that you're called to this, whatever the business is. I don't care what it is. B, have a passion around it, and then have a community around you who believes in you, not just the business, but believes in you and is there for you. That's the second one. And then the third one is know your numbers. Like, don't delegate your numbers to somebody else and say it'll eventually happen. But if we look at any business, if we invest in the S&P 500, for example, we want to know what our efforts are, what's coming in. Why wouldn't we want that for our business? We should want that for our business.
So for the business, do you think that, and you mentioned entrepreneurs and these kind of people who think that they want to do something, but maybe inside of them that they really don't, it's like they want it for sure, maybe. I'm not sure for that. I don't know. It's like the poor person who wants to rent a Ferrari for a day to show people that he has money and he actually doesn't have any. So how important it is to have passion, and how important do you think consistency, being consistent is important to succeed?
Yeah, I think we're living in two different worlds sometimes, where the super uber rich can do things and make it, and then there's the rest of us, right? And so what really, if you are like the rest of us, it's about consistency, just showing up, right? And it's almost like a boxing match. The last one standing is going to make it, right? Can you outlast other people, right? And grabbing hold of trends. Like, we've been podcasting for years before podcasting was even a thing. I didn't know. And I wish I would have done a lot more efforts towards it, but we didn't know. We just kind of, and there's a lot of people who are like, what they say, doing the podcast fade, right? Where they started a podcast and then they gave up, right? They stopped, right? Because it sounded cool until you got to do editing and you got to do all the things. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. Editing. A lot of people, especially like you mentioned, why businesses fail. I actually read some kind of article specifically about podcasting. Like, I'm not sure what percentage was, but about 90 to 90, maybe 5% of podcasts in less than 6 months stop because they stop beyond the 10th episode or something like that.
Yeah.
Because they think it's like you have to do 2 episodes and you are like golden, you are going viral, and it's not like that.
Same with writing a book,
or
building a website.
A lot, exactly. A lot of people who are successful today, for example, in podcasting, they have done it like, for example, for years. Like, they started back in 2003, maybe 2005. These kind of years, yeah.
And I think that's the thing that people need to realize as they go into business is play the long game, right? We're not playing a short game, and this is the problem in our world. Is we've been playing the short game for so long, and even our financial foundations aren't stable. And people will say, and I've seen this, I do financial analysis for people all the time. I'm a 7 and 8 figure business, and they tell me and how awesome they are. I'm like, yeah, you are bringing in 8 figures and you're keeping hardly any. Right? That is not a healthy business. That is, you are a slave to somebody else, right? So how do you build a business? I don't care. It could be making 200,000, right? But if you keep 100,000, that's a better lifestyle than, I'm a 8-figure business, but I only make 20, right? And a lot of people are this idea of whatever those numbers are, half of it's an illusion. And we have to kind of like take our blinders off and realize that we are most of the time in an illusion. And how do we build stable businesses that are going to last generations?
So Brendan, do you think that the most aspect of business is to focus on? For example, I studied accounting in university. And that accounting is focused a lot on statements and cash flows and these kind of things. So what is the most important thing in business, do you think? Is it like Peter Drucker said, business, it's about innovation and marketing? Do you think business, innovation and marketing, plus you need your financial literacy with that?
I think that's the hardest part of a business owner, is it's all of it. Right. And you have to wear all of the hats, right, until you grow. And so I look at as a small business, and I think about this as I have a 4-year-old, right? So my 4-year-old, he now does a lot of things on his own. But when you start a business, it's like having a baby, and you have to do all kinds of stuff that you did not want to do. You didn't sign up for. Well, you kind of did, but there's things that you have to do that you're like, man, could you just like poop on your own? But they don't, right? And so that's the way a business is. And you have to learn all the different things until you can delegate it. Now, there's a couple things that I think about is make and keep money. Marketing is going to be the main thing most of the time. Sales, not necessarily marketing, but sales. That is important in every business. And I tell
to bring the revenues in. Yes.
Yeah. I tell my staff, they're like, well, I'm not a salesperson. I'm like, well, every person in the world is a salesperson, because if we didn't have sales, you wouldn't have a job. Right. And so we're in that role. You have to be the number one advocate for your business, 100%. Because even your mom isn't going to support you that much. She's, you most of the time, they don't even care what you do. You have to go and pitch to strangers, right? And the stranger gets it, right? I see that like at a coffee shop, right? And you're like trying to get your friends to come, and they're like, I'm too busy. But then neighbor comes, anyway. And so you gotta be all about sales, but it's make money and keep money, right? So you gotta understand that everybody has a plan for your money, including marketers. So how do we make it and keep it so we can grow it?
So how can we keep it? Are you talking here about savings, like putting a savings account for the business, or a personal saving accounts for that certain individual or certain business owner, for example, putting a savings account for their spouse or their kids or whatever?
I think it's all of them, and it depends. So I might have a different answer in a different phase of my business, right? And this is where I lead into my a thing that we've created called the STILL method. And a lot of times in the STILL method, it's really asking questions, and you have to sit with those questions regularly. Even if you're a solopreneur, you have to be answering these questions. Now, the opposite of STILL, and I'm going to get to what the STILL method is, but the opposite of STILL for us is chaos, right? And you think the world is in chaos right now, right? A lot, every time. Who knows what's gonna, but when this episode airs, who knows? We might have aliens that showed up. I don't know.
With the James Webb Space Telescope, yeah.
Right, exactly. Who knows? I don't know, but it's possible with the couple years we've had. But chaos is confusing. It's haphazard. It's anxious. It's overwhelming and stressful. Now, I know we're in different countries, but do you feel like that's happening in where you're at?
Yeah. There's a lot of things that impact the globe, all the countries, sometimes in the same way. Like, for example, what's happening now in Europe between Russia and Ukraine, whatever. It's affecting lots of places, lots of countries. So it's now I think the Earth reach a point where now there is literally no boundaries. The internet has made it like totally less. Everything is less. There is no borders. There is nothing. But countries have borders. But
So I notice everywhere we go, there's that chaos happening, confusing, haphazard, anxious, overwhelming, and stressful. And with that, the TV and everything is telling you, well, don't worry about it. Here's this, take this and you'll be fine. And all this, and we're sick all over the place. We're sick. And I believe that the small business owner is the answer to most of the problems, right? The entrepreneur, if they can make it, right? And so we have to be in a place of clarity, right? We have to be in a place of peace in the midst of whatever's happening. Even if you have a team of 20, they're going to look at you as the leader and say, where do we go, Captain? And you have to kind of know where we're going. And so
you have, as a leader, any leader in the world, whether it's a business organization, a leader should make a decision. That's the job of a leader.
Yeah. So with that, it's going to what we call the STILL method, and it's set your sights. You have to know kind of where you want to go. have a path plan. So you have to set your sights. Most people don't even know what they want to do tomorrow, let alone, and that's why a business owner needs to have at least a 5-year goal or something to be working towards. So you have to set your sights. You have to track your in and out, track what's going in, what's going out. That's the budgeting thing, right? Am I doing the things I said, right? Inspect your progress. So not only do you track it, you inspect it, right? Then you look for 1% adjustments. What are the little things I can do if I'm going off course? What are the things I can do to recalibrate to get there, right? You invested in, I don't know, something in your business, and it didn't pan out the way you wanted, right? You drop it and you try something else. Maybe look for 1% adjustments that's going to increase marketing revenue. I don't know. And then you have to live deliberately, right? You have to actually be intentional. And you do this over and over and over again, right? And it's not just about money. It's about everything. Set your sights, track, inspect, look for 1% adjustments, live deliberately. Those pieces will help you have a full life. And it can be as simple as, am I having a good marriage, right? How do I want that to look? And so stopping actually helps us go further. And so that's the still method, which is seems counterintuitive, but
the problem is when someone's asked someone else, like for example, I heard that a lot when for example a coach asks their client, for example, what do you want? The answer would be like, it's like you don't know what is it that you want. So you're saying here that, for example, for a business, it's a must for a business owner or entrepreneur to know what they want. For example, have maybe a yearly plan or 5-year plan, specific things related to operations of the business, related to the culture of the business, related to the finances, right?
Yeah, and I think that it's an organization. It's a living, breathing thing almost, right? And so your answers are going to change. That's why I can't answer the question of what should you do. I don't know. Depends on where you're at in the business and in general. But asking those questions, and then your answers may change as the business is growing, right? And I think that's a hard thing, because we want to have a answer to ease. I'll solve your problem, just buy this thing and I'll give it to you. And that is a microwave culture that has almost killed us pretty much, right? And we don't know how to be still. We don't know how to actually listen. And it's in that thinking time and in that those pieces that we actually build a solid, stable foundation that are going to last forever or longer.
Yeah. So speaking of foundations, for example, and these kind of things, what do you think are the most important resources for individuals in regards to finance, or businesses in regards to finance, that they should have?
Oh, like what kind of tools should they have? Or yeah. One is, I think they should have a brain around it and think themselves. Number one, don't ever just assume Dave Ramsey or whoever else is going to have a understanding of that. To be a researcher, right? And don't assume because we're just parrots. Most people are just parrots, right? They just copy whatever they heard on Twitter or on something else, but understand why you think certain things, right? So that's the first thing, is kind of have a good mind around it, right? So I do something in the space called infinite banking, and it's using whole life insurance that's properly designed to build and have access to on your terms, right? That is how life insurance works, right? At least the way we design it. However, there's people who hate it, who want to tell us how stupid it is and blah, blah, blah. However, I also know I used this policy to get through the emergency in my business when we had a flood, to buy my property, and use it again to buy a commercial real estate property. Now it's all about thinking like a bank as opposed to being the bank or being the customer of the bank, thinking like it. And so that's a different way, but also building a foundation. Most businesses are upside down pyramids, right? We're risking more than we can afford to lose, and we're doing it a lot. And that's why we're all screwed, is because everybody's foundations are upside down and we are risking when we can't. Does that make sense?
Do you think, I'm not really sure. I think I read this quote like a long time ago by some German philosopher. I even forgot the name, but something like banks are a problem, basically. So do you think that banks are a problem, or are they actually a solution to people?
This is the interesting thing, because without debt, there would be no money, right? Without the economic system, and this is the interesting thing of asking of, is debt a problem? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. If you can leverage debt in the right way, it's not a problem, right? But a lot of people are the collateral damage of the system, right? And so we want to think through, am I collateral damage or not, right? And you think about it, whenever a bank or a financial institution, they have payday loans here in the US, in the south side of Chicago, right? And it's where these people are getting their money for really expensive to be able to do what they need to do, buy groceries or whatever. And somebody's profiting off of that, and then within this system in the US, the Fed, and all of that stuff, it's run by banks, right? So are we better off or not? The jury's still out. It's been the most profitable business in the world, and it's been around since before time, pretty much. And will it go away? I doubt it. But can it be redeemed in a better way? I hope so.
And can you give us, give us the audience something that might be considered some kind of a myth in regards to finance or personal finance to people?
So you mean like what they should do with money, or what do you mean?
I mean, some kind of a myth, like, for example, now we mentioned that the banks could be, they could be good, the good guy, might be the bad guy. So is there something around personal finance for people that they should not think of it as a negative thing?
Yeah, I think it depends. So if you're in consumer debt, right, it should be more of a negative thing. Get out of consumer debt, right? Meaning you're spending more money than you're making. Then and going back to being a business owner, there's two things that you can do: make more money or spend less, right? We can control how much we make, right? Hopefully. So that's a thing, but spending less than you make and creating assets versus liabilities. Too many people are like, I need to buy a boat because I deserve it. You don't deserve anything, right? Or whatever. Excuse me. But I think that's the challenge in our world, is we're saying, and this has been over the past 30 years, you deserve everything. We went off of the gold standard. We became consumers versus producers, right? And you notice that our health is going worse than better. And it's a mess. So again, going back to the still method of saying, what is sustainable for me? What kind of life do I want? Is the goal to be a billionaire, or is it to have a life to the fullest? And what does that look like for you? And maybe it's not having a mansion with a Ferrari. Maybe that's just a thing that we want because we want to look good. And then I would ask you, the listener, check your motives.
So you mentioned getting assets or buying assets. For example, because for example, as a business owner, you want to increase the profits or decrease the cost. But when we say decrease the cost, for me, for example, we don't want it to be in the expense of an employee, hopefully. But when we talk about buying assets, what kind of assets are we talking about here?
Yeah, I think about I run my own firm, right? Business. We created a coffee shop. So some of my assets that I had weren't necessarily a house or stocks, right? And again, speaking to a business owner, your asset is your website. Your assets are your email list. Your assets is what you have, the social media context and input output, right? Those are assets, right? That's why they think of valuations. When you do a valuation to sell a business, they're looking at what are your assets, what are you making, right? Those are very different, but at the same time, you want to have non-correlated assets. So for me, I'm buying a building for my office. That's a asset that's personally owned by me that the business is going to be a renter for, right? And it's going to rent to me, but I'm going to have that asset that I can then use to buy other assets or leverage and use the banks in a positive way, depending on what the interest rates are, right? And I might think that as time progresses, depending on what's happening in the world around us.
Yeah. So do you think that, for example, like you mentioned, assets does not mean in the internet, in this internet age, does not mean only maybe buildings and land, these kind of, or stocks or whatever. It could be like, I mean, you mentioned it could be a website, it could be maybe social media following, huge social media following, these kind of things. So do you think assets in general will pay dividends in the future, or there are some kind of assets that eventually will turn out to be expenses or liabilities?
I think that's a great question. And that's the hope of our business, is paying us dividends, right? That's the profit first model, right? Of getting profit and dividends from that. And sometimes it's a grand experiment when you're a business owner, right? You're hoping it's going to be a asset, but it becomes a liability, right? And that's just going through life, that we think it's going to be a great idea, and some of them are home runs, right? Some of them are duds. And so you have to figure out quickly which ones are going to be that and which ones are not. 20 years ago, you tell me social media followers would be an asset, that didn't even exist, right? But now, looking at the attention and the lack of attention that people have now, the bigger your brand is, the bigger attention you have, right? And that's the hardest part in a small brand, is that asset of attention. And how do you build that? That's a hard one to even figure out. But again, it's like, what do you want in your life, and what are considered assets for you, like in living, not necessarily on the cheap, but living in a way that is healthy, I think.
Yeah, it's important. Like, there's a lot of talk now about minimalism and these kind of things. Like, you don't need like so much physical stuff, but you need at the same time to live life. like as you mentioned earlier, to the full potential of your life. So yeah, that's important.
I think about this with the coffee factor, right? They call it the latte factor. If you minimize drinking coffee, you can save so much money and blah blah blah. And I'm like, dude, I used to own a coffee shop. I would have hated that. And I like my lattes every now and again. Don't tell me that I can't do that, right? Because I want to be able to have the freedom to do that when I want. But my numbers are going to tell me if I can afford a Ferrari or not, and my wife's going to tell me even if I could afford it, you can't have it. Right? That's somewhat going to happen, and I probably wouldn't do it anyway. But again, having that community, having that relationship to the numbers, to be able to make wise decisions. I think that's the problem in our world. We aren't very wise anymore. We're told chase rate of return, and the market has not delivered on what they promised. You know, the definition of an insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. And
Albert Einstein, I think so.
Yeah, I just feel like a lot of people are insane, and they're doing different things and wanting I don't know. And I'm like, well, we gotta come back to some sustainability. The world needs us to be sustainable, actually.
Yeah. So do you think, Brendan, do you think we missed something important while we were talking about personal finance and banking on yourself?
I think, again, it's just you as the listeners and all of that is thinking through this, whether it's if you're in the US, think about what infinite banking and that strategy, if it makes sense, like reach out to somebody, right? And really think through your numbers. Like the one thing I've learned in all of this is there's no do-overs. We have one life to live, no backwards kind of thing. How do we best position ourselves? And if you think you don't understand numbers or want to, every person is going through there spending money or making money, both. How best do you make sure that you are a good steward and can grow your wealth? That's, so we can help more people.
Yeah. So do you think you can give us some fact about you that we don't know, some shocking fact about you?
Shocking fact.
Yeah. Do you like golf, or do you like football or soccer or whatever?
I will tell you, I used to be in the music industry. That most people do not know. And I worked for some of the biggest celebrities in the US and world. And I am out of the music industry for reasons that I cannot disclose, but it's some crazy things. Then I'm out. But that was a fun experience.
The music industry has a lot of, I guess, bad stuff in it.
Yeah, good and bad, but sex, drugs, rock and roll, that's what they say. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I'm glad that I experienced it. I'm glad I'm out, and I'm loving that I'm helping entrepreneurs, build more of a stable financial future. That's the goal now.
So can you give us only one takeaway for this episode?
Yeah, know your numbers.
That's very important.
Yeah.
and hopefully the numbers are on the positive side of things, right?
Yeah. No, hopefully it's in the green, or in the black, not the red. But know your numbers, and if it is in the red, what are you going to do about it, right? Too many people are playing victims, and we don't need to be victims. We need to actually be victors. And so stop playing the victim card and say my mom did it or my dad did it or whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, we're in a global world now. I mean, I'm talking to you all the way from all around the world, right? I mean, it's amazing. We don't have to play the victim.
Yeah, you have to work. You have to be consistent. You have to do the work eventually. There's nothing comes easy, whatever it is actually. Nothing comes easy in life. And even people, when you think about whatever they are doing now, they might be doing it now easily, but at some point they were working hard for it, but maybe that's how they were programmed to do. So maybe you need to change how you think. So maybe some kind of a shift, a mindset shift you need to do, but nothing comes easy. You have to work for it. Yeah.
And you're not entitled. People in America anyway, we all think we're entitled to it. I'm like, dude, you're not entitled to crap. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm too harsh, but whatever.
So, Brendan, when can people get in touch with you? Where can the people find
of course, go to my YouTube channel, Wealth Wisdom Financial. If you look up Wealth Wisdom Financial, the podcast is Wealth Wisdom Financial Podcast. We do podcasts fairly regularly, and then do interviews on our channel on YouTube very often. And then go download the stillmethod.com. There will be a book coming probably next year. It's all in here and not out there yet. But it's going to come shortly. So the Still Method, go download the playbook, and then you'll be able to be in the know. So when the book comes out, it's going to be a bestseller.
Cool, amazing. Hopefully, I am waiting for that book to come out also. So thank you, Brendan, for being here today with me on this episode of the SuccessGrid podcast. Hopefully, we delivered some value to people who were listening or will be listening to this one. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.